Now, before we get into the technical stuff, I kind of want to give you a brief history of encryption. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to go really in depth on all the different events in the history of encryption, but it occurs to me that a lot of people, if you've never used encryption before, you may think, well, this is a new thing with computers and everything, and actually it's not. Encryption has been around for hundreds of years, and it's been used by governments, kings and queens, armies, generals, and now even by modern business, modern governments, and even individuals such as me and you. Some early examples of encryption that I could give you, for example, is the Caesar cipher developed by none other than Julius Caesar. And it was a simple substitution or transposition cipher, and basically it involved just switching letters of the alphabet. And I can give you an example of that as we go through the course, but basically that's a very simple example of a cipher. Another example that I'll show you here in a moment is the SkyTel, and it's basically a stick that you would wrap a message around and use it to encrypt a message. Encryption was also used during the American Revolution by both the British and the American troops to get messages about battles and troop movements and supplies and so forth to their comrades across enemy lines. Now, if you look at the little pictures here, these are some examples of what I just spoke about. On the left, we have an example of the Caesar cipher, and basically you can see how one letter might become another letter just by transposing it or moving it down a couple of positions. Now, a lot of you in grammar school or elementary school may have used very simple ciphers like this to pass secret messages on the playground or whatever. That's called a Caesar cipher. The picture on the right depicts a SkyTel. Basically, it was a stick. And what happened was both the sender and receiver had sticks or rods that were the same length and thickness. And what you did was you wrapped paper around the stick and wrote your message. And then when the paper was unraveled, you couldn't make sense out of the message. The only way to decode the message, per se, was to wrap it around an equivalent stick, a stick of the same size and thickness. So the other party had that stick, and the actual dimensions of the stick may have been kept secret so that not just anyone could produce a stick that had the same dimensions, and then they could decrypt any messages that were sent that way. So it's actually a really ingenious little method, and it worked for several hundred years. Now, a couple of other pictures that we have here, just to give you examples. On the left, we have a Enigma machine that was used back during World War II, and the National Security Agency actually captured these machines and broke the codes. These were used by the Axis powers. And on the right, you have examples of simple transposition and substitution cipher methods, ways to basically rearrange letters of the alphabet in groups and in different combinations so that they made basically very hard to crack codes. Now, why do we need encryption once again? We need it to protect data over networks and computers. And this need to protect data, as the computer age started coming into play, basically encryption was revived and refined. We no longer use the old methods such as a SkyTel, for example. We no longer just rearrange the letters of the alphabet, because as we found, those methods are actually easy to break. So we have much more advanced methods these days. During these days, we use complex mathematical formulas called algorithms and complex keys, sometimes called variables or cryptovariables. And these things are used to transform or scramble the actual bits of the data, the ones and zeros that make up the data, and scramble those into an unreadable form that's readable not by a machine or by a human being, but can be reversed so that the receiver of the message can re-scramble them back and turn them into a readable form. And we're going to get into all this as we go about algorithms and keys, so don't worry about that. And we're not going to get too mathematically intense on this course, so you don't have to be a math genius to understand encryption. So that's basically a little bit of history, some examples of encryption as it's been used over hundreds of years, and how we've came about now to use basically very complex methods of encryption. Let's move on now and start talking about some of the more technical things having to do with encryption.